Someone believed that this was able to communicate with the spirits. They would put it on the table, they'd receive messages. Whether you're a believer or not, there's still something inherently powerful that people had those sorts of experiences with these devices, these conduits to the afterlife. The earliest forms of American spiritualism are the seance, really, table turning, table rapping. That is, we're communicating sort of binary with the spirits. We're hearing strange noises, strange knocks and raps, and we're able to communicate with them by asking, rap once for yes, rap twice for no. From that is born all manner of refinements of spirit communication. So a planchette is typically a small flat board, and on the underside it has two small wheels on casters, and the third wheel, as it were, is a pencil. And so this device would be placed on a tabletop on a large sheet of butcher paper, and the sitters communally would put their hands on this device, and it would start to autonomously move. It would actually script out, it would actually draw out messages. In its early uses, this was used by mediums and in communal seances by true believers, by spiritualists. We have to understand the periods in time that these devices sprang out of. They came at a time where the telegraph was very new, where electricity was very new as this unknown force. The mesmerist in particular thought we had this magnetic animal fluid, animal magnetism. You could charge the wooden planchette. Of course, you can't charge wood with electricity, it's a non-conductor, but those conceptions were so nascent when these devices were being first created. And this idea that, well, if I can receive a message through a telegram from someone hundreds of miles away within a few minutes, can we just sort of raise those poles a little bit higher and maybe communicate with something beyond? You'll notice that the popularity of these devices is going to ebb and flow with war. You'll see that people are reaching out. The planchette is tapping into a zeitgeist of loss and sorrow. One of the great joys of collecting is when you acquire one of those items that you know was well used. And in this case, the nickel Morris planchette. This planchette was acquired from the son of a woman who sat in a seance group known as the Higginson Circle. That group would receive communications from soldiers who had been killed on the battlefields of the Second World War. So to know that on some level this item brought comfort to those who had suffered loss in the Great War makes it an incredibly powerful item. I have a piece of apparatus that's not only an incredibly rare spirit communication device, but really a piece of American history. And it's one of Dr. Robert Hare's spiritoscopes. Lots of Dr. Hare's inventions still exist. Actually, the first wing of the Smithsonian Institute was named after Robert Hare, but that was before he constructed these spirit communication devices. And so as far as we know, this is the only one to have survived. Dr. Hare created this device as one of a series of what he called spiritoscopes. He was a devout Christian, and he set out to debunk spiritualism. Dr. Hare begins performing these tests with these different devices, and he begins to become a believer. And so he reverses course, and he instead presents these devices not as debunking devices, but as the very proof that the afterlife existed. He was a huge pop culture figure. This is sort of the equivalent of Neil deGrasse Tyson coming out on Cosmos and saying heaven is real and the spirits can talk to us. And so it made an incredible splash. Make no mistake that there were believers that were coming up with these devices as a way to communicate with the other side, and they believed very thoroughly and strongly that they were able to do so. And it is very convincing, as even the most jaded teeny bopper girl that's used a Ouija board at a slumber party can attest. It's a very powerful feeling when that planchette starts gliding across that board and spelling out things that you don't think that the spirits know. And even if you attribute it to ideomotor response, and it is unconscious muscular action that's pulling information out of your subconscious and translating it into this novelty board that glows in the dark with a plastic planchette in our modern times, it's still amazing that the human brain is capable of autonomously and cooperatively producing these messages. When you've experienced that and see how powerful that is, even as a skeptic, it's quite easy to see how much more powerful it is for a believer. The spirit trumpet is another very fascinating piece of spirit communication. This actually produced the spoken word. So rather than the automatic script that the planchette produced, there's a similar theory that spirits were able to manipulate human vocal cords to the properly sensitive medium and could produce ghostly whispers, which would then be transmitted to the seance sitters with the spirit trumpet. From planchettes to talking boards, there's this weird paradox that we can kind of view, and that is they're taken at once very seriously by the spiritualists who are using them for communication with the dead, but then once the general public gets a hold of them, they become parlor games. They just become these fun pastimes, rather innocent. Planchette for 15 years is used seriously, yet when they hit the general public, it's the yo-yo, it's the hula hoop, and everybody's doing it. They're in every bookstore all over the country, and it's this fun parlor pastime, and it's not necessarily the spirits. You would ask planchette was a capital P proper noun. Planchette, answer this question for me, and the spirits get kind of stripped from it. If I could impart one thing to others about these devices, other than just seeing them and appreciating them, I want them to understand their place in history. To me, they're not just this passive item. People throughout history put their hands on these things in hopes that they could communicate with the other side. A lot of our world is tied up in these devices, and what they represent was a profound belief that was followed by millions of people that has been sort of dismissed as kind of just kookiness. And then to really get at the heart of what they were seeking and what they believed, I think is important to recognize, and I think these devices help bring that knowledge to the public.